Okay, Toastmaster guests, please welcome Annie Ryan with her speech entitled "You May Notice Some Changes in Annie." You may notice some changes in Annie Ryan.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks for giving me the freedom to speak here tonight. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. I have told this story many, many times, but tonight I want to tell you how it impacted on my life. Words are powerful, really powerful, but they must not and must never power over us. Why I'm saying this is because the message is clear. It is how we as individuals interpret the words we hear and what we do with them that makes us who we are. I want to share with you tonight how words 9.5 years ago have driven me to push myself, to prove and to show you and to prove to myself that the benefits of not believing everything you hear, except, of course, for my speech here tonight. I would like everybody to remember what I'm going to share with you, and if ever a family, friend, yourself, or anybody is struck with adversity and is fighting for their life, never, ever, ever, ever accept a diagnosis. Don't ever underestimate the character, the willpower, the human spirit that lies deep within all of us to get through that barrier. Always remember that. Never ever let go of it. A diagnosis is simply just a diagnosis. It doesn't determine any of those things. It doesn't tell us who we are, what's underneath that. So diagnoses are simply based on facts alone. So if you hear a diagnosis of anybody ever, don't ever give up hope. Remember, the individual is greater than any diagnosis. So, as some of you may already have heard me say, on the 18th of August 1998, I was struck down and dropped to the ground when an aneurysm burst in my brain. An aneurysm is a dilation of a vessel that blows out. Or to put it in clear terms, as I used to tell my children, if you blow a bubble big enough that you've got in your mouth and it bursts, all the air comes out. The same thing happens when a bubble gets in your vessel in your brain and it gets enough pressure, it blows out. And it creates what is known as a brain hemorrhage. I was lucky enough to be found because I didn't pick up my young son from kindergarten and time was against me. But I was got to hospital in time, but all odds were against me. While I was fighting for my life, or the doctors were trying to save me, my family were given the odds. The odds of survival of a brain aneurysm are, out of 5, maybe 2 die instantly. Of another 2 that get to the operating table, they are left with massive disabilities or they die on that table. And the 5th, well, diagnoses are only diagnoses. I feel blessed to be the 5th without a lot of deficits. But every hour and every minute counted for my life. And I thought, I didn't know what was happening, but my inner spirit drove me, and I know that today. My family were on the other side watching it. But it wasn't what I was going through, but it was what was said. What was said when I was released from the when I was heading home from the rehab centre some 6 weeks later. I was in a family conference around the board table. I had neuropsychologists, I had speech therapists, I had doctors, I had nurses. I had everybody that had judged me. We were sitting around, my husband and my mother, and I was there with my helmet on because I didn't have a skull that had been left behind at the hospital because there was so much swelling on my brain that my skull couldn't be put back in, and for my own safety I would have to go back in another time and have it put in. But it was the words as we sat at that table that I will never ever forget. The doctor said, "You may notice some changes in Annie." Well, more than the obvious ones, that my head's missing, that I've lost a lot of weight, that, you know, all of the things that are already happening to me, that I've got weakness down one side. You mean there's more? I can still remember the words, and I can still remember my husband and my mother looking at me as if I was something different and that there was something more to come. From that day, I have set out to prove that there may be some changes, but what does it matter? They talked about short-term memory loss, and they also talked about long-term memory loss, Peter. Sorry, George. And what does it matter? This is what I'm trying to say here today. Somebody made a judgment on me. You may notice some changes in Annie. So everything I did was I was under the spotlight. I have been under the spotlight from my family ever since, trying to prove that I am normal. But you may notice some changes in Annie. 9.5 years later, wouldn't your family notice some changes in you, Dave? Wouldn't your family notice some changes in you, Jean? But what I am saying is I was never going to let those words change my life and change who I was. So I have been driven. Am I doing it to prove to myself, or am I doing it to prove to my family? Why am I doing it? I'm doing it because I'm alive. And I want people to know that never ever give in and never ever accept diagnoses that people give you, or never accept labels that are put on you. You are who you are. Be true to who that is. And what does it matter if there's some changes here and there? Don't we all change as we grow? And we grow not only outward and upward, but we grow through life experiences. So accept those changes and embrace them and say, well, this is who I am. Okay, if I'm, get a bit, what does it matter? It just doesn't matter. So please, can I leave you with this one thing here tonight? That it's not the words that are said to us, it's not what we hear, but it is what we do with them that makes them powerful. Thank you for sharing my story.